The Cincinnati Bengals might have the worst defense in the NFL, if you could even call it an NFL defense. And that's why they're 0-3. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day, even after they lay the most colossal egg you will ever see and have one of the most embarrassing performances in prime time on Monday Night Football, on Ring of Honor night, that you will ever see. That aside, we have you covered. And we'll break down why it went so awry and what's left for the Bengals this year, as they're in a hole that is very hard to get out of, but the season is far from over. This episode is sponsored by FanDuel, where you can place a $5 bet. Your first $5 bet will get you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Check it out at FanDuel.com to get started. And James, this was an embarrassing effort from a defense that might have one NFL quality. Maybe that's not quite fair. I think, Chris Jenkins was okay tonight. The defensive line is a problem. It is the root of their issues on defense. To me, it was the root of why they could not get a single stop, and they could have won this game, but they could not get a single stop all night.
No, none. The clock stopped them at half and gave them a breather, just for the special teams to let Austin Eckler return a huge kickoff and set the momentum for the third quarter. Yeah, it was just awful. I mean, the defense is awful. You know what it looked like? It looked like when you're playing against someone in Madden that just isn't used to playing defense, and it's like, all right, well, the first of 40 is going to win, and the first one to make a mistake is going to win. And the Bengals literally couldn't force them into making any mistakes. A field goal, which put them up by 2 scores, felt like a huge win. And that's just wild. And yet that's the reality that they faced tonight. And there was a mixture. It was explosive plays in the passing game. It was long drives that just take the clock right out of it. And especially in the fourth quarter, some really great throws and great plays by Jayden Daniels. There was a mixture, missed tackles and just no playmaking ability. 2nd and 9. Well, the Commanders get 8 yards. Well, now they're converting. You got them 2nd and 9. You can't give up 8 yards. And I felt like that happened like 12 times tonight. And they continuously saw 3rd and short, and then converted 3 4th downs, 4th and short. You could not get off the field, couldn't make plays. That's the story, because the offense was making plays. And it never felt like they were going to win that game. It never truly. Now, were there times where I had some hope that they were going to be able to turn things around? Sure, no doubt about it, because the offense kept them in it. But this defense, that is the story. Because if the defense plays like that, they're not beating maybe any teams. As I think about this, probably any teams in the NFL.
I mean, it's as bad as you can be on defense. Literally getting no stops. A few crazy stats about this game. The one that I like is that. Oh, where did it go? I just had it. Since 1920, Taylor Cornell had this tweet. Teams that have 0 turnovers, 0 points, and score at least 33 points had never lost a game, according to his stat head search. 112-0. After tonight, it's 113-1 because the Commanders did it and won, and the Bengals didn't do it and lost. This comes a week after the Chiefs had the first win by a team that went for less than 300 yards, gave up 21 points or more, had 3 or more turnovers, and converted 18% or less of their 3rd downs. So the Bengals on two ones of very crazy stats in terms of incomplete football games. And that's what this was. This was a defensive meltdown of massive proportions. The Washington Commanders had 22 first downs on 57 plays, only 9 third downs faced in the game. And as you mentioned, when they got to those third downs and they got the stops, they went for it on 3 4th downs and converted all of them without too much drama. And that's one of the more frustrating things about this game is there wasn't any apparent difficulty in what Washington was doing outside of their yards per carry, which were much lower than I think either of us would have expected at 3.4. If I would have told you that the Bengals were going to rush for 6.2 a carry and the Commanders were going to rush for 3.4 a carry, who would have won this game? If I would have told you that before this game, probably it was going pretty well for Cincinnati, right?
Yeah, I think so. At the same time, that's why run the ball guy is wrong, because it doesn't necessarily matter.
Well, and it just so happened that the Bengals' response to it was selling out to stop the run, which meant they were vanilla and vulnerable defending the pass when they couldn't get pressure rushing for. And that's where it comes back to the defensive line. They're trying to give them help. They're trying to do things to help with the run game. And then there's just no pressure. Trey Hendrickson almost single-handedly won the game last week by creating havoc, creating pressures, drawing penalties. This week, he had a much tougher go of it, and it was much more apparent that when he can't win consistently, they have nothing in the pass rush. And Jayden Daniels was sitting back there for 3 seconds per throw on unpressured pockets. And as Troy Aikman pointed out on the broadcast, essentially playing 7-on-7. He was just standing in clean pockets all night.
Yeah, and that was literally the story. I mean, the story is Jayden Daniels going 21 of 23, being comfortable, seeing the field, making these awesome throws from a crisp, clean, comfortable pocket. And he was able to make plays with his legs when needed to. And I think that's what was so tough. And that's why I compared it to Madden. It's like, oh, okay, well, this isn't there. Well, I have time to get to this. Oh, well, that's not there. Well, I have time to go here, or I have time to step up, or I have time to move over. Oh, man, you're going to tackle Brian Robinson on this play. So I'm going to take it myself, and I'm going to get the 3 yards on 3rd and 2 or 4th and 1. Like it was just, it was that easy. It was like he had an easy button, and there was, he was playing against a Bengals defense that was in rookie mode. Mm-hmm. And he was like on all pro, and it's just that's it. And I was waiting and waiting, because we've seen this Bengals defense do this, especially last year, where they get off to these awful starts. They're giving up yards, points, and then they adjust, and then they find a way to get a stop. And it might be ugly and it might not feel great, but you look up and they've gotten a couple of stops and they build a little bit of momentum. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting. And in the second half, after Washington went down and scored again, it's like, this probably isn't coming. And it didn't. You said it at the top. They needed one stop today. One stop, one turnover. And they couldn't do that. And that's why the Bengals are 0-3 for the first time in the Joe Burrow era, first time since 2019.
They had one chance at a stop, and they couldn't fall on the ball. We'll recap that play, talk about what's to come for this defense. We'll nitpick the offense a little bit, although that's not really fair. The offense was great tonight. There were ways for the offense to win them this game. They did leave some things on the field. So not perfect anywhere, but you can't really expect perfection anywhere, I guess, unless you're the Washington Commanders offense, who scored on every single drive that didn't end in kneel downs tonight in Cincinnati. We will continue the conversation. And it's hard to get off the defense, because that's really where this story is for this team right now. Coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is where you need to go if you're looking to hire for your business. Small business, big business, maybe an NFL team. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire, which is why you got to get the LinkedIn Jobs. It's going to make it so much easier. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
The Bengals had one opportunity late in this game on defense. Well, two, I suppose. One, Jermaine Pratt forces a fumble. Great individual play to punch the ball out. The ball even is in his hands for a second as it falls to the ground out of the hands of Zach Ertz, I believe. And then the Bengals don't fall on the ball. They also get a sack from Trey Hendrickson after a false start penalty to set up a second and I believe 21. The Commanders throw a screen and multiple Bengals miss De'Ami Brown at the line of scrimmage. He picks up 5 yards and eventually they get enough on the third down play to convert on fourth down. Mm-hmm. And so it's a number of issues, right? It's not just that the defensive line is bereft of talent outside of Trey Hendrickson. Cedric Johnson should get more snaps at this point than perhaps any of the other edges not named Trey Hendrickson on this team. The defensive line is down to street free agents. Lawrence Guy was fine tonight. And guys that were on the bubble of the roster going into training camp, and Chris Jenkins, who played a limited number of snaps tonight and was fine, but not good enough. And so you have these talent issues on the defensive line, whereas Trey Hendrickson and some guys. And then you have other guys that are a little bit better, but getting beat deep in opportunities to make plays, where Geno Stone and Cam Taylor-Britt get split on a go route by Terry McLaurin, and neither of them can stay over the top of that ball. And then on a later play, on a fourth down, Dax Hill bites on a double move, and Jayden Daniels makes an incredible throw right as he's getting crushed by Geno Stone to ice the game. So you have these talent deficiencies on the inside. You got guys getting beat outside because Jayden Daniels has too much time for the most part and built confidence early in the game. And then you have this tackling issue that came back. And we thought it was mostly taken care of. It was better against the Chiefs. It wasn't the biggest issue against the Chiefs. And now it's back and they're missing numerous tackles at or behind the line of scrimmage again, or just not in position, not trusting other players on the defense to do their job. And as a result, being out of position to do their own job on plays. Really everything that could go wrong went wrong for this defense, I would say, tonight.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, even when there was a really good play in the red zone where Mike Hilton comes up, cuts down Brian Robinson inside the one.
And gives you a chance.
Neutral zone infraction, Jermaine Pratt. Like, that was the type of night. Like, even when the veteran that's been there, done that, rises up, they make the play that you're talking about, or that I talked about a few minutes ago, that we expect this defense to make, where it's like, yeah, they're on their heels, they'll answer. And that felt like an answer moment. And then it's like, actually, it's a penalty. And Brian Robinson coasted in. You and I could have scored on the very next play. I mean, he was untouched. He didn't get touched until his teammates got to him to celebrate the touchdown. And that's it. And I think you bring up a good point too. Early is what matters. The good start, and they started well on offense, you go get 7. And then if you force Jayden Daniels 3 and out, you force Jayden Daniels, you make him feel you, even if they do go get points. You make him feel you. Well, then that confidence might not be through the roof, but it was early. And that's what makes it tough. When it's through the roof early and they've scored back-to-back touchdowns, you have the Brian Robinson touchdown, then the Austin Eckler touchdown. You're making plays in the passing game. If you're Jayden Daniels, like, all right, I like this Monday Night Football thing. I like the fact that the Bengals crowd is booing their team because they can't stop me. Let's keep it up. And he did. And early, when you're facing a young quarterback, the early stages of the game, that's when you want to get to them. And they didn't. And they couldn't at any point, obviously. But man, if they could have done something early, I think it would have gone a long way to get him out of rhythm. And instead, he was in rhythm, and it really just felt like, you're right, anything that could have went wrong for the Bengals did. I mean, Dax Hill had a heck of a year, right? 2+ games where I thought he was playing really, really well. And then he gives up that play where it's just a dagger. It's just a dagger in crazy play, awesome play. But that's a got to have it play, got to get off the field play. And they didn't. And they had a few of those today. And it's rough because literally just one of those one of those fourth downs, I think the Commanders, they finished 4 for 4 on fourth down?
3 for 3
3.
on fourth down.
3 for 3. Yeah, I was getting ahead of myself because that touchdown counts for a couple. I mean, the Bengals outgained the Commanders. That's what's crazy too. The average gain per play, but the Commanders 3 for 3 in the red zone, 5 for 9 on third down, 3 for 3 on fourth down. Do the math there. That means there was one time that they had to settle for a field goal because they were 8 of 9 on third and or fourth down. And that's not the recipe that anyone would paint. But you're right. Like rushing yards wise, if you would have said the Commanders only run for 108, it's like, oh, well, the Bengals had a lead early. They were in control of the game and they forced Daniels to pass it. And that, I guess they did technically have a lead early, but they didn't keep it for long.
And it wasn't just the defense either. The special teams too. Giving up that return to Austin Eckler to start the second half is brutal. I don't know why you're not just kicking it into the end zone in the first place when your defense has been struggling. You're trying to give them 5 more yards to work with by getting a good special teams play. Instead, you give up a huge return, and then Washington only has to go 33 yards. You also have to credit Washington and, again, be harsh on the Bengals defense for how long they had the ball. They outpossessed the Bengals in this game. When it looked like the Bengals were going to answer, and they hit Jamar Chase for that second touchdown, and the officials were blind to another pass interference call that could have benefited the Bengals on the 2-point conversion try, and that's blatant, but not the reason they lost the game. That took them 1 minute and 48 seconds to go 70 yards.
Yep.
Washington comes out and runs 12 plays, 7 minutes and 32 seconds off the clock, and at that point, you need an onside kick to win if you're the Bengals. If instead they can get a stop after 1st and 15, or after 1st and 15, or after 2nd and 20, or on 4th and 4, or on 3rd and 7, maybe you have a shot. But they didn't get the stop. And I don't see where the help is coming from. And that's the scary thing. They can get BJ Hill back. They can get Sheldon Rankins back. Those will help a little bit. It should help. They'll get Miles Murphy back. That should help. But when you can't stop a rookie head coach with a rookie quarterback, and I know Dan Quinn's been a head coach elsewhere, in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, a single time, literally cannot stop them. How much can a few players make a difference? How much of this is on Lou Anarumo at this point? Could Lou Anarumo have called something different at different times in this game, or were his hands tied by his personnel and the way they had to commit more to trying to stop the run that opened up the passing game so much for Jayden Daniels? Could they have blitzed more? Could they have disguised better? Could they have gotten themselves into position on early downs to do some of those exotic things on late downs? Those will be questions for film review and questions that many Bengals fans are asking tonight. The obvious thing to me, though, was the inability to get pressure on a consistent basis that led to Jayden Daniels tearing the Bengals up through the air whenever he needed to.
Yeah, he completed passes to 8 different players. 8 different players, spreads the ball around, and Terry McLaurin was lost in this offense the first couple of weeks. Gets going. Luke McCaffrey, someone we talked about pre-draft, had a couple nice plays. But it was just a mixture. Zach Ertz, a couple catches on 3rd down to extend drives, or 4th down to extend drives. Noah Brown, who had a big game against the Bengals last year, had a couple nice catches. You mentioned Austin Eckler. The Diami Brown play, I know Geno Stone blew him up, but he turns that into something. Like, that matters.
Yep.
Like, those things matter when you're – like, that 5 yards, it's the difference between third manageable and not. Like, and that was it. It was – the Commanders always got those extra couple of yards to make it that much easier to convert. And it is crazy. Let's get to the offense some. And the unfortunate injury. And up next, you can read it too. One of us is going to read Joe Burrow's stat line. And this is a stat line that if you would have told me coming into tonight that Joe Burrow puts up, I would have put Jake Lisco's life savings on the Bengals winning the game. So we will do that. Thank goodness I didn't. FanDuel would be a lot richer, but we will do that coming up next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. And look, I get it. You're feeling down about the Bengals and what happened on Monday night, but you need to get to FanDuel right now. Get in on the action. Download the FanDuel app or visit FanDuel.com and get started today. You can, in the middle of a game, check out the latest stats, a live play-by-play in the FanDuel app. And guess what? You can also place your bets right there. FanDuel is convenient. It is easy. There's a reason it's America's #1 sports book. So whether you want to look at the Bengals futures when it comes to week 4 and Andy Dalton and the Panthers, or you want to look at the rest of the NFL week 4 slate, FanDuel is the place to go. And right now you're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com and place a $5 bet. Again, that's FanDuel.com.
Joe Burrow was awesome in this game. Jayden Daniels was also awesome in this game, but that doesn't take away from what the Bengals offense did tonight. The Bengals offense wasn't perfect. If they were perfect, they actually would have won the game, despite what the defense did. But Joe Burrow finishes 29 of 38 for 324, 8.5 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, only takes 2 sacks, one of which is on the play where Trent Brown is injured. And it doesn't sound good for Trent Brown. Sending him our best wishes, as he could not put weight on that right leg in the middle of a play and went down. That was one of the 2 sacks Joe Burrow took. The other one on an inside move that his replacement, Amarius Mims, who got into the game and was mostly good, gave up. But Joe Burrow was great in this game. The Bengals offense was, for the most part, great in this game. What we thought they would be in this game against what I thought was the worst defense in the league until I saw what the Bengals did tonight.
Yeah, that's fair. Look, 33 points. I had them at 31. And so they get to 33, even with the missed field goal by Evan. And obviously that's one you have to have. You didn't get it. And that's it. That's the only possession the Bengals didn't score on. That's got to be enough. That has to be. Yeah. Joe Burrow, 29 of 38, 324 yards, 76.3% completion percentage, sacked twice for 12 yards, no turnovers, 3 touchdowns. Hits Jamar Chase for a 41-yard touchdown and a 31-yard touchdown. Finds Andre Yosevich on a 4th down for a touchdown. Like, say it out loud. Look at all those things I just said. Let's go to the ground game too. Everyone's like, run the ball. 6.2 yards per attempt. Chase Brown was awesome with his 7 attempts, 8.9 yards a pop. I thought Zach Moss was really good today. 58 yards, nearly 5 yards a carry. Another 39 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Like, all of those things should result in a win. Yes. And yet they didn't. And that's what's crazy is like, and I think that's after the game, Joe was searching a bit. You could tell like he's processing it and talking, and he's being very open about like his headspace. And I think he's like, man, and I don't think he feels this, like thinks this way, because he's a team guy, of course, and he's mad that they lost. But he's like, we just played really, really well on offense. What do we need to do to win? Like, what button needs to be pushed for this team to get over the hump and be the team that they think they can be? And I think that'll be the question he's asking over the next day and a half until we hear from him on Wednesday.
They have 3 close losses this year that could, if you wanted to argue, come down to just a handful of plays here or there. Obviously, in week 1, if they can make one more play, and we talked about all the plays they didn't make in week 1 against the Patriots, they could have won that game. Against the Chiefs, they had a controversial DPI call, but again, they make one more play there, they win that game. Mm-hmm. And here, you can almost make that argument too, to a different degree, if they get one more stop on defense, which would be one more than 0, so 1, they could win the game. If they turn their red zone possessions into touchdowns instead of field goals, they can win the game. If McPherson makes his field goal and they get the DPI call, or T. Higgins just catches the ball when he's being interfered with on the 2-point play, maybe the game goes differently. Mm-hmm. But it feels different in this one because of the way things went on defense, where even though the offense was good, it's hard to imagine any team winning when they get that kind of defensive effort. And that's why you sit here, and while the blame clearly is squarely on the defense, you can actually nitpick the offense a little bit. Like Mike Gesicki, you kind of need that catch when your defense can't stop a a slight breeze. You need that catch. It's a hard catch. You need to make that catch. Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, you need to connect on that third down instead of settling for a field goal in the red zone.
Yeah,
Joe,
Jamar's got to catch. Jamar should have caught that, by the way.
Yeah, it's a low throw, and Jamar needs to catch it.
And by the way, I think it was kind of designed, and I'm not defending Joe, but he didn't want Jamar to get crushed, and I think he was throwing low. Maybe not that low on purpose, but I think he wanted to throw low, so Jamar just settled in and got the first.
Yoshi needs to be on the same page with Joe Burrow a little bit more often and sit down when Joe needs him to sit down. Joe needs to hit Zach Moss in the flat to make that a shorter third down before that play to Jamar Chase.
He mentioned that. He thought it could be a first down potentially.
To Zach Moss? 100%. Yeah, could have been. Yeah, oh, yeah. He just missed the throw. Or maybe Moss was backpedaling and it was weird or something. But, yeah, it's a throw that Burrow needs to make. But these are nitpicks, right? You scored 33 points. And that's with a 2-point conversion, and that's with a missed field goal. You very well could have had 38 points in this game, like the Commanders did. And so the blame squarely on the defensive side of the ball. It's just nitpicks on offense. In general, very encouraged by the offensive performance. They got to a ton of different things, which I thought was really cool. Very personnel diverse.
Yep.
Very formation diverse. A lot of motion. They found ways to take advantage of when they got blitzed and they got those one-on-ones. Joe looked as comfortable and as in control as he's looked all year. And this is all what we expected. And that's great that they did what we expected on offense, or, as you said, even exceeded our expectations on offense. Every drive, a scoring drive. But it's hard to feel much about that when you feel the way you do about the defense and the way that I feel about the prospect of the defense figuring out a way forward. And it's hard to find those answers right now on this team. Yeah,
it is, because the defense has been good at times and then the offense can't deliver. You go to Arrowhead and you're just a play short, at the end, whether it's offense or defense. And then today it is what it is, where one unit is just much better than the other. They have to put it together. And we'll get into this as the week goes on. Like, as crazy as 0-3 is, you could easily see the path still, but that path is really, it's getting farther and farther away. Like, now you have to go through an obstacle course, around twirly, swirly land of gumdrops like Elf did, and make it to New York. Like, if you're going to do that and you're going to get to where the Bengals hope to get to, and I think that's, again, the reality that Joe was facing. And I'll have more on this. I'm still processing it, and I tweeted this out. Like, Joe and Zach didn't go into the locker room. Mm-hmm. They went into a different room and directly in there and had a private conversation. Zach didn't want to touch it. Joe talked about it some. And I think he said it was a mutual thing that they needed to do. And so I think they are searching a bit. And Joe probably views it as, yeah, man, we started slow, but we should have won these past 2 games. We should be 2-1 with wins over the Chiefs and Commanders. And instead, they're 0-3, and he's never been 0-3 in anything in his life, except maybe ping pong on an off day. And I think that's probably unlikely.
It's frustrating, to use a word that the Bengals use a lot in the locker room, that fans are going to use a lot, because they're all close games. They're all games that they could have won. They should have won. You can make an easy argument that they're the better team. But when you lose all the games, and you do that every week, you can't make that argument anymore, because good teams find ways to win those games. And in an 0-3 hole, you're right, you can see the path forward, but they've lost 2 games in their early schedule that looked like more than winnable games. Heavily favored in both of those games, heavily favored at open against Carolina. We'll see what that line does throughout the week as Vegas loses confidence in this team. But as John Breach points out, only 4 teams over the past 40 years have made the playoffs after an 0-3 start: the 92 Chargers, 95 Lions, 98 Bills, and 2018 Texans. That is a difficult hole to climb your way out of. Typically, those teams don't have good units anywhere. The Bengals, I think, have a good offense here. And they showed today that they can be a really good team on the offensive side of the ball. But if they don't get anything from their defense and their offense can't even get onto the field and needs to score in a minute in 30 seconds to just have a shot at an onside kick at the end of the game, that's not good enough. That's a bad team. And if this is going to be a team that isn't a bad team, the defense needs to turn it around in a hurry. And like I said, James, it's hard for me to see where those answers and solutions are coming from within the building.
Yeah, we'll have to figure it out, discuss it. And obviously the Bengals have a lot to figure out. I think there are layers to this in much like Burrow, much like the Bengals and how they process the next day or two. We'll be able to do the same. And don't bail on us, Bengals fans. Don't bail on the Bengals, of course, but definitely don't bail on Locked On Bengals. Hang around because you never know. I would say this. If there's one dude that I wouldn't bet against, it's Joe. But you know what you can't do? You can't go 0-4 because then everyone's betting against you because you're not getting out of that hole. So, but we can dive into all those numbers. But stick with us. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow wherever you get your podcasts if you're new or if you're one of those fans that likes listening after a loss. I think they're rare. I feel like our fans aren't going to love this one.
The people that are still here at this point, we appreciate you very much for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. We will not miss a beat here. We'll be back. We'll be doing our thing, covering this team, bringing you the insight you need, and trying to figure out where they go from here. And it's a short week. They got to move past this quickly. No off days this week. So until next time, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, and have a good one.